On New Year's Eve, my uncle suddenly proposed to transfer a house in my family to my cousin's name. I said it was the dowry my parents gave me, and my cousin slapped me on the spot. "You're just a little girl, but you still want to take away our old Chin family's property." My mother was so angry that she took me back to the city overnight. As soon as she went to work after the holiday, she took my father to get a divorce. On New Year's Eve, my dad drove 6 hours to take my mom and me back to our hometown in the countryside to celebrate the new year. During the New Year's Eve dinner, my uncle suddenly said to my dad, "Xiaowei has a girlfriend and is about to get engaged. Your family has 2 houses. Give one to your nephew and write it in Xiaowei's name." My dad was confused. "There are 2 apartments in my house, but one of them was bought for me." My mother said this was my dowry and my premarital property. No matter when in the future, girls will have their own house. Their waist will be stronger. During these years of marriage, my father has always been responsive to my grandfather and uncle's requests. But this time, what I wanted was not a small item, but a house. My dad was silent at that time. I knew that my dad refused because of his face, so he said, "Uncle, the apartment in my house is a dowry given to me by my parents. It is written in my name and cannot be given to my cousin." When the cousin heard this, he slapped him and said, "I am the one who spreads the incense to the old Chin family. You are a girl who will get married in 2 years. You still want to take away the property of our old Chin family." When my mother saw me being beaten, she became anxious. Ran was right. Her father and I bought the house for her. Why did Xiaowei hit someone? Is there anyone taking care of this matter? Grandpa looked unhappy. Second brother, we men are discussing things. Why do women get in the way? You don't care about your wife. The uncle was drinking a small drink next to him and staring at my dad. Xiangzi, if I had been chosen by lot to go to college, now I could be an engineer like you and make a lot of money, so there would be no need to beg you. My dad lowered his head to drink and said nothing. The cousin threw his chopsticks on the table. "Everyone is here today, so I made it clear. I am the only seedling in Lao Chen's family, and it is spreading its branches and leaves at my fingertips. If I run away because I don't have a house partner, you have to be responsible for it." My mother said with a cold face, "You are getting married and preparing your own house. Why do you care about my Ran's house?" The uncle slapped the table. "This is a matter between us brothers. Sister and brother. You are an outsider, so don't get involved. Xiangzi, you are Xiaowei's biological second uncle. He is getting married, but the other party says he doesn't have a house and won't register. As a second uncle, should you give him a house?" My mother also looked at my father, waiting for him to express his opinion. My dad didn't dare to look up at my mom, so he just sat there drinking glass after glass of wine. In the end, my mother was completely disappointed. "You, the Chun family, should discuss your own affairs among yourselves. Ran and I are both outsiders, so we won't stay here." After saying that, she pulled me out of the door. The 2 of us drove back to the city overnight and didn't get home until 4 in the morning. Along the way, my father made several phone calls to ask us to pay attention to our safety. But when I asked him when he would be back, he couldn't answer. From a harmonious family of 3, we were the only ones left, and we didn't have a good time this holiday either. My mother told me clearly, Ran, no one can take away the house that belongs to you. If your dad loses his mind and insists on doing this, I would rather divorce him." When my mother said this, she was just speaking out of anger. What we didn't expect was that Dad's brain was really broken. Dad stayed in his hometown until the 6th day of the Lunar New Year before coming back. I don't know what he has been through these past few days. Dad is obviously very haggard and has a few white hairs on his temples. My classmates and I made an appointment to watch a movie on the 6th day of the new year. When I came back in the evening, at the door of my parents' bedroom, I heard my father begging my mother in a low voice, "Wife, If Xiaowei doesn't have a house, the marriage will be ruined. I am the only nephew. Look, can we help? Help? How to help? A house worth more than 1 million yuan. Just give it away. My mother's tone was very aggressive, and she became angry when she heard it. Do you remember that when we bought the house, we agreed that this house would be used as a dowry for Ran, so that the girl would have the confidence to get married in the future. If you are bullied, you can turn around and leave, and you will always have your own shelter. I remember them all. Dad said humbly. Remember, you still do this. In order for your nephew to get married, my girl's house must be given away. What do your family think? Over the years, you have been flirting with your hometown overtly or covertly, and I have never said anything. But now I want a house, which is too big an appetite. How could they open their mouths? The father looked ashamed. Wife, just think of me as begging you to help them one last time. From now on, I will work hard to make money, work overtime and travel more, and I will definitely buy another set for Ran. Do you have to give the house to your nephew? Dad hesitated for a while and nodded. Mom said with a cold face, okay, if you make up your mind, then send it away, and I won't stop you. Dad was surprised and happy. Wife, did you agree? No need for me to agree. Tomorrow we will go through the divorce procedures. You can give your share to whomever you want. My mother does what she says. The next morning, as soon as the Civil Affairs Bureau opened, she took my dad to get the divorce certificate. The big 3-bedroom house I live in was given to me as a gift. The small house as my dowry was later renamed to my cousin's name with my cooperation. After completing the formalities, my mother took me away without looking back. After walking far away, I looked back and saw that my dad was still standing at the Civil Affairs Bureau. At the door, he kept looking in the direction of our mother-in-law, with an expression on her face that showed reluctance, guilt, and regret. I can't say for sure, it's quite complicated anyway. Just when I thought he was going to call us, he lowered his head. My father and my mother are college classmates. They have always been in a good relationship. I didn't expect that after the spring festival, they would get divorced because of this kind of thing. I can see that my father is not willing to divorce, and he can't let us go. For some unknown reason, he was manipulated by his hometown, as if he was bewitched, and he listened to them in everything. Dad's hometown is in the countryside, and conditions are better now. He was very poor when he was a child. I heard him say that when he was in the 1st grade of high school, his family was too poor because of a bad harvest and could not afford to send their 2 children to school. Grandpa told him and his uncle that they could only keep one of them in school while the other went to work in the city to earn money to support the family. He discussed with his uncle, who was a senior in high school, and decided to draw lots. There are 2 pieces of paper. One says school and one says part-time job. Whoever catches which one will go. Everything is left to fate. At that time, my uncle grabbed it first and opened it. It said working on it, so the next day he carried a small bag and followed his neighbors in the village south to work in Guangzhou. During the years when my uncle was away, he sent money back on time every month. My dad knew that this opportunity was not easy to come by, so he cherished it very much. He studied day and night, and finally got admitted to a 985 college with the top score in the county. After entering college, my dad started a work-study program. The tuition and fees for the 4 years of college were all earned by working part-time as a tutor in his spare time, and he never asked for a penny from the family. After graduating from college, my dad applied for a job at a well-known design institute and stayed in the provincial capital. My dad and mom are college classmates, from different majors. After knowing each other for a while, they developed a liking for each other and established a romantic relationship. My grandmother's family is a family of intellectuals. As an only child, my mother has always been doted on by the whole family. When she heard my dad talk about his experiences in the countryside, she felt very distressed. She told my dad that the two of us would work hard in the future, strive to make more money, and honor the elderly on both sides. My dad was also very moved when he heard it. During those years, there was a real estate boom across the country. My dad majored in architecture. He graduated from a prestigious school and was very good at business. He came to me for many jobs. He was very busy and made a lot of money. In my family, it is my mother who is in charge of the finances. After my father graduated from college, he sent money to his hometown every month. During the New Year and holidays, overtly and covertly, a lot of money has been spent over the years. My mother knew it, but never said anything. In my hometown, my grandfather and the others obviously favored boys over girls, which made me feel uncomfortable every time I went back. For example, while women work, men chatter. During meals, men sit at the main table and women sit at another table. Boys are attracted to any good things, such as food or playthings. If my cousin and I quarrel, he always talks about me and tells me to give in to him. Why? He is several years older than me and I still have to give in to him. I couldn't accept it at first, so my mother told me that many rural areas have this idea of favoring boys over girls. It's so deeply ingrained that it can't be changed at all. If you compete with him and make each other unhappy, Dad will only be in a dilemma. Anyway, I only go back for a few days a year, so I can endure it and give my father face. I thought my mother was right, but I didn't argue with her later. As long as I go back to my hometown, I can bring whatever good things I have to my cousin and treat it as poverty alleviation. Anyway, when I return home, I am still my parents' little princess. As for whether others treat me well or not, I really don't care. What I didn't expect was that our family's humility was taken for granted by some people, and our appetite grew bigger and bigger, even to the point of asking for a house. In this divorce and property division, my father only received a small house that was originally in my name. The big house and all the savings were left to my mother and me. Probably in my father's heart, he also felt that he was at fault. After my parents divorced, my dad and I would still see each other often. His love for me since childhood was real. I heard from my dad that he gave the small apartment to his cousin, and now he rents a single room next to his unit. I really can't understand his foolishness and filial piety. Dad, you broke up your whole family just to help your uncle and the others. Do you regret it? Ran. If your uncle hadn't given up his studies and went out to work, my father wouldn't be where he is today. A person must not forget his roots. Even if you want to repay a favor, there must be a limit and you cannot give endlessly. Dad lowered his head, took out a cigarette case, silently took out a cigarette and lit it. Dad, why did you learn to smoke? I grabbed it. Do you know that if you smoke this thing too much, you can get lung cancer? Dad smiled bitterly. At my age, sometimes I feel that death is not terrible. Bah. Don't talk nonsense. When I get married, you must be there. Hold my arm, and hand your most beloved daughter to the groom. I'm afraid that if I can't help crying, I'll embarrass you. I was reluctant to even get married, and now I was willing to divorce my mother for the sake of others. Fair enough. Dad looked sad. Your mother has paid enough over the years. Your uncle is a bottomless pit. If I divorce her, she will be free from it. He asked again, how is your mother doing recently? If you want to know, go see her yourself. She is probably still angry and doesn't want to see me. Any woman will be angry. You did this with your elbows turned too far out. Dad lowered his head with a guilty look on his face. Dad also had his own reasons. What difficulties do you have? Is it not the same thing as before? Drawing lots is a part-time job that the uncle draws by himself, and he cannot blame others. I said angrily. Besides, when my uncle was in high school, his grades were all at the bottom. Even if he was asked to take the college entrance examination, he wouldn't be able to pass it. Dad was silent, with a complicated expression on his face, and it was hard to tell what his expression was. I thought that my father paid a heavy price and my uncle and cousin also got the house. This time it should stop. Unexpectedly, this matter is not over yet. 2 months later, my uncle came to my dad again and said that his cousin wanted a bride price and asked my dad to help with another 200,000 yuan. My father told them that he had divorced my mother and the house he was assigned was transferred to his cousin. Now he has no money. When my uncle heard this, he immediately fell out. He said that my father was stupid and was deceived by my mother. My father said that he was willing. What's funny is that it's not possible even if the person involved is willing. The uncle and others think that all our family's property belongs to my father, and everything my father owns should be given to them. Based on this reasoning, what my mother and I took were things that should have belonged to them. Under the guidance of this strange brain circuit, they felt like they had lost a lot of money. So, one afternoon, my uncle and cousin came to my school to find me. They were on campus, looking for people everywhere to ask if they knew Chenran. I happened to meet my roommates, thinking there was something urgent at home, so I took them downstairs to the dormitory. When I heard that they were coming, I felt dizzy. Fortunately, men were not allowed in the women's dormitory, otherwise they would have barged in openly. I originally wanted to hide in the dormitory and not go out, but I couldn't stand them shouting my name loudly downstairs, so I had to call my dad first and then go downstairs to see them. As soon as he saw me, my cousin rushed over. "Damn girl, you dare to be so cunning and change the big house in your family to your name." His loud voice attracted the attention of countless classmates. There were people waiting for someone, some passing by, and some people sticking their heads out of the windows and looking at me with meaningful eyes. People who don't know, think that we are biological siblings, and we are acting out a drama of the scheming sister plotting against the brother and stealing the inheritance from the biological brother. Damn it, my parents gave me the house. Why do I need to tell you? I looked at him coldly. Chen Wei, my parents are willing to put my name on our house. Does it have anything to do with you? Of course it does matter. My second uncle's house belongs to our old Chen family, and I will inherit it in the future. Why? My cousin said it so confidently that it made me laugh. Even if you haven't gone to college, you still need to have basic legal knowledge. Our family's property is divided into half between my father and my mother. Not to mention that my dad is alive and well, even if he has an accident. When it comes to dividing his share, my mother will take half. Grandpa and I will share the other half. Does it have anything to do with you? Maybe I was too polite to him before, but my cousin suddenly saw me refuting him, and he felt a little uncomfortable for a while. When he came to his senses, he started scolding me. "You are a little girl, but you have a shitty inheritance. This is the current era. If you had been born incompetent in the past, you would have been given away long ago." I don't want to argue with him here. I just said directly, if you don't understand the FA, go back and study it hard. I have classes later. If you don't have anything else to do, I'll go back. Don't leave. My cousin stopped me with a fierce look in his eyes. "I heard that the big house is now in your name. If you don't explain this clearly, you can't leave. There's nothing to say. My parents are happy to give it to me as our house, and it's not your turn to take care of it. I'm going to talk to you here. Don't be shameless." My cousin raised his hand, as if he wanted to slap me. I took a step back. "Let me tell you, the school police station is next door. If you dare to touch me, I will call the police. I'll catch it for you when the time comes, and you won't be able to eat it and carry it around." The cousin glanced around and saw that there was indeed a police station next to him. There was hesitation on his face. When the uncle saw us frozen there, he came over to smooth things over. Ran, actually, your brother and I came here today because we heard that your father and your mother were divorced. Is this true? Yes, because of the transfer of my dowry house to my cousin. My mother and my father quarreled, and they divorced in the end. I stared at my uncle. and I couldn't find any trace of guilt on his face. Only calculation. Your dad, apart from that small apartment, what else did he receive? Gone. Originally, these were my family's private matters and there was no need to tell them. But then I thought about it. They knew my dad had nothing, and maybe they would no longer think about him in the future. My dad can also live a quiet life. When the uncle heard this, his face immediately turned ugly. Your mother is too dark. After being married for so many years, I gave your dad a small house. After your dad transferred the house to Shaowei, he didn't even have a place to live. Uncle, my house only has 2 apartments. If it were my dad, having a place to live means that my mother and I have to live on the street. I mocked. If you really feel sorry for my dad, ask your cousin to give the house back. How can I get married when he lives here? My cousin stared at me. Why didn't I give the remaining big house to my second uncle? My dad feels sorry for me and my mom. Okay, it's your mother who wants to leave, so she should be allowed to leave the house. There is no reason to let my second uncle leave. Hey, cousin, why are you so angry about our family affairs? If you've already got a house, you can just get married as soon as possible. How can you still have time to care about other people's affairs? Second uncle's business is my business. Besides, the money for my bride price hasn't been settled yet. How much? 200,000. If you don't have money, you ask your dad for it. Why do you always ask my dad? This is what my second uncle owes my dad. He gave me a lot of fun. Cousin, if I remember correctly, it has been my father who has always used money to support my grandfather and uncle in these years. Can you figure out who owes whom? Of course your dad owes my dad. If your dad hadn't cheated back then, it would have been my dad who was successful today. Why would I have to ask you for money? I was stunned. What are you talking about? What do you mean my dad cheated? Your dad originally, Shaowei. The uncle didn't seem to want his cousin to continue talking. Dad, there is no need to hide it anymore. Now that my second uncle is divorced, he has nothing to share. Seeing what he means, he doesn't plan to give me anything more. If so, there is no need for us to keep his secret anymore. What secret? In the middle of winter, I broke out in a cold sweat on my back. It turns out that my father has been hiding something from my mother and me. Moreover, this secret may be the root cause of his repeated sacrifices and being controlled by others. The uncle seemed to be convinced and no longer stopped. My cousin said proudly, back then, my grandfather could only afford to send one person to school, so he asked my father and his second uncle to draw lots to decide. In order to continue going to school, my second uncle played a trick and wrote part-time job on both strips, and then asked my dad to catch them first. As you know, my father later went out to work and sent money home every month for my second uncle to go to school. Without my father's efforts, my second uncle would be just an ordinary farmer now. Do you think your family would still have the good life it has today? I do not believe. You must be talking nonsense. My dad is not that kind of person. Hey, you think your dad is a gentleman, but in fact he is just a scheming man. You are a slanderer. I'm anxious. What evidence do you have? After drawing the lots, my dad kept an eye on it and opened another small piece of paper to read. The word part-time job was clearly written on it. My dad took 2 notes and showed them to my second uncle, who immediately knelt down in front of my dad. He begged my dad to give him the opportunity. He said he would repay my dad after he was admitted to college. You're lying. If you don't believe it, ask your second uncle. If he didn't have any leverage in our hands, do you think he would be so obedient and give us whatever he asked for? My cousin's words were like a knife thrust into my chest, making my heart ache. In my heart, my father has always been a good father with integrity and respectability. I simply cannot accept that he also has such a side. With tears in my eyes, I looked at my father standing next to me. Through a layer of mist, I could clearly see the pain in his eyes. When the uncle saw his father, His face was obviously embarrassed. Xiangzi, when did you come? I just arrived. But I heard everything they said just now. Brother, you once promised me that only the two of us know about this matter. Xiaowei and Ranran are not outsiders, and they will not tell anyone. The uncle looked a little flustered. Brother, I have already said that I am penniless now, and there is really nothing I can do to help Xiaowei anymore. I hope you won't disturb Ranran again today. This is where she goes to school, the cousin said dissatisfiedly. Why don't we come here today to stand up for you? My second uncle, when you and your second aunt divorced, you got a small apartment, and the big house and savings went to them. This is so unfair. My dad and I are here to help you ask for money. Dad shook his head. No need. I will leave the money and house to the two of them. Xiangzi, what you said is wrong. The uncle's face darkened. Ranran was a girl and would definitely get married in the future. Ranran's mother divorced you, and she might remarry one day. How could you let them take away the money and house? Isn't that giving someone with a foreign surname an advantage? They are my wife and children. They have suffered a lot for me over the years. I'm willing to give them everything I have. The uncle was furious. No, this is related to the property of Lao Chen's family. This divorce agreement does not count and must be divided again. I signed it voluntarily, and I was willing to leave the money and house to the two of them. What is this word? Your surname is Chen, so you should take care of our old Chen family. How can you turn your elbows outward and help outsiders? Dad said sternly. Ranran and her mother are not outsiders. They are the most important people in my heart. What do you mean? I ask myself. I have contributed enough to my family over the years. From now on, I will not be able to help you anymore. Aren't you afraid that I will tell Ranran's mother the secrets from back then? We were both divorced. How could things get worse? Dad is quite a bit like breaking a jar. Seeing that the threat was useless, the uncle persuaded him in turn. Xiangzi, you see you have helped us for so many years, and now you are just trembling at the end. As long as you give Xiaowei 200,000 yuan and let him collect enough money as a gift to marry a wife, we will not bother you again. When you get old, Xiaowei will be your biological son. Let him take you by his side and take care of you in your old age. My father has a daughter and doesn't need anyone else to support her in her old age. I stretched out my hand to hold my father's arm. Dad, don't worry. As long as I am here, you will not be let go at any time, and you don't need anyone else to support you. Dad patted my hand and nodded heavily. Okay, daughter, Dad is counting on you. The uncle and cousin left. I took my dad to the school's open-air sports ground. The father and daughter sat in the stands and talked about what happened back then. I was a freshman in high school that year and really wanted to study. When your uncle asked me to write the note, I became obsessed and made a mistake. You don't know, when your uncle showed me the 2 notes, I was so ashamed that I wanted to die. We are brothers, and I actually used this method to fight for my own interests. What did the uncle say at that time? He said that he didn't miss it at all and it would be nice to work early. He asked me to study with peace of mind, get into a good university in the future, and not forget about my family. Dad, you've done it all these years, but I still feel that it was all because of my selfishness that I changed your uncle's fate in this life. If he had been chosen to go to school, maybe his life would have been different. Why didn't you tell me and Mom about this earlier? When it came to drawing lots, I cheated out of selfishness. Over the years, on the one hand, I feel guilty for your uncle and feel that I have wasted his life. On the other hand, I dare not let your mother know. I am afraid of her, afraid that she will not let you send money to your hometown. No. Dad stared at the ground. Your mother, she has always thought that I am an upright person. If she finds out that I have such a dark side, she will be disappointed. When Dad said this, he lowered his head and looked sad. After a while, my dad looked up at me. Ranran, Are you disappointed in Dad? In my heart, you will always be my favorite dad and the most perfect dad. I hugged his arm tightly. Dad's eye circles instantly turned red. He turned his head and muttered, "Oh, you are already a big girl. Why are you still acting like a child?" Dad, I am indeed not a child anymore. I can understand many things. The mistakes you made back then were made when you were 16 or 17 years old. Because of this, you have been carrying such a heavy burden. You are afraid that what happened back then will affect your image in your mother's heart and hurt her. But have you ever thought that you have concealed the truth from your mother all these years and sacrificed the interests of our little family for your uncle and the others? This is a more serious betrayal. Think about it. What happened back then or what you are doing now? Which one is more harmful to your mother? Dad was silent for a long time and sighed. When I proposed to your mother, I thought I could protect her from wind and rain in the future. Unexpectedly, I was the one who really brought her ups and downs in these years. And she has always been tolerant of me. Dad, when I first heard my cousin say this, I couldn't accept it either. In my mind, you have always been a tall and perfect image. But think about it on the other hand, you are human too. As long as you are human, you will make mistakes, not to mention that you were only 16 or 17 years old at that time. Isn't it normal to make mistakes? Over the years, you have been atoning for what happened back then. You usually send money to Grandpa and the others every month, and pack it back in large and small packages during the New Year and holidays. Whenever something happens in your hometown, you always pay for it again and again. In the past 20 years, it cost at least hundreds of thousands of yuan, plus the house given to my cousin this time. The total cost is nearly 2 million yuan. This kind of contribution is enough. However, if your uncle had won the lottery, even if he wins the lottery go to school, it won't change the current situation. I said flatly. To put it bluntly, my uncle's original grades were such that he couldn't get into college. Even after graduating from high school, I still work part-time. In that case, there will only be one more farmer in the family, and the family will only be worse off than it is now. On the contrary, it is because you passed the exam and supported your family over the years that they benefited more. You paid for the new tile-roofed houses of my grandfather and uncle. You paid for my cousin's school tuition and supplementary tuition fees in recent years. You also left little money during the New Year and holidays. Plus this year contribution is enough for your second cousin's wedding room. Dad, I always feel that I owe your uncle this life. Dad, even if you are a prisoner and you are sentenced, you will be released one day after serving your sentence. What you did was not that serious, and you have made atonement for more than 20 years. It is time to untie this knot in your heart. Dad was silent for a long time, then suddenly smiled. He touched my head. My Ran has really grown up, and now she can tell Dad some truth. Dad, have you figured it out? I asked in surprise. Dad seemed to be relieved of his burden and his back straightened up. But now that we have reached this point, I wonder if your mother will forgive me. It depends on what you do next. I hugged his arm affectionately. Dad, don't worry, I will definitely help you. When I got home in the evening, I told my mother what happened today. My mother heard that my uncle and the others went to school to make trouble. She was worried about me at first, but when she found out my father's secret, she didn't say anything for a long time. I said, Mom, although it's wrong for Dad to do this, it's because he cares about you. So, he would rather leave us. Dad knows he was wrong and regrets not telling you these things earlier. I put my face on her arm. Mom, everyone makes mistakes. Dad has been punished for his mistakes back then. Will you forgive him? My mother shook her head. For whatever reason, he gave up the interests of our mother and daughter at the critical moment and chose to stand on the other side. This I cannot forgive. Alas, although I sympathize with my father, My mother is absolutely right. Thinking of what happened some time ago, I was so angry, let alone my mother. This is the only way to go. I muttered a few words silently in my heart. Dad, please wish yourself well. Over the next 6 months, my dad and I would meet occasionally. Dad seems to be very busy at work during this time, often traveling or working overtime. Sometimes I worry about him. When will I be able to win back my mother's heart if I am only busy with work? However, although we rarely see each other, Dad still thinks of us. He often calls me to ask if I have enough money, and he always brings me some small gifts when he goes on business trips. When Mom celebrated her birthday, he ordered a big cake and a necklace. Your mother has been married to me for more than 20 years, and I have never given her any decent gifts. She kept saying that these things were tacky and she didn't like them. In fact, she was afraid that I would spend money. Dad opened the jewelry box and showed it to me. The hollow diamond necklace, with its simple and sophisticated style, looked elegant and generous. When I first got married, I really had no money. Later, when conditions got better, I had to save money to buy a house. It was so easy to buy your trousseau house last year. I thought I would finally have a chance to celebrate this year, but I didn't expect. Dad, what happened to the divorce? You can get your mother back again. On my mother's birthday, you gave her this necklace. No, 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 I'm afraid your mother won't want to see me, which will make her birthday difficult. Dad carefully covered the jewelry box and handed it to me. Tell your mother that this is your birthday gift to her. Dad, are you really confused or pretending to be confused? As a college student and a typical hand stretcher, can I afford tens of thousands of dollars in jewelry? In the evening, I invited my mother to have dinner at a high-end restaurant and handed her the jewelry box during the dinner. My mother took it and opened the lid. The crystal diamonds are dazzling under the light. My mother fiddled with it for a long time before saying, "This is the style I tried on when your dad and I were shopping last year." After the divorce, she mentioned her father for the first time. Towards the end of the year, my father made an appointment with me and took a taxi to a newly opened sales office. Dad, why did you bring me here? Ran. Dad gave your dowry house to your cousin earlier, and our house was transferred to you. There is nothing in your mother's name. This year, Dad saved some money. You can go in and have a look later. If there is an apartment you like, buy it in your mother's name. I'll make a down payment first, and my dad will pay the monthly mortgage. After waiting 2 or 3 years, Dad will have saved enough money and pay off all the loans. He pulled me into the ticket office and asked the sales lady to help introduce the apartment type. Finally, I chose a 3-bedroom and 2 living room with more than 130 square meters. Ran. This apartment has a good layout, with good transparency from north to south, good lighting, and convenient transportation. What do you think? If you don't like it, we'll look at 2 more. During the divorce, my father left all his savings to my mother. The down payment for this house was nearly 600,000 yuan. How hard did he have to work in the past 6 months to collect the money? I felt sad when I looked at my father's obviously whiter hair on his temples. After choosing a house, how to go through the procedures is a difficult problem. My father was afraid that my mother would not accept this house, so he asked me to find a way to steal my mother's ID card. When I got home, I told my mother. My dad helped me find an internship unit and asked me to send my personal information there as soon as possible. It's dark at night and I'm a little scared to be alone. Why don't you accompany me there? My mother shook her head. I don't want to see him. Just accompany me downstairs and I'll walk you up and leave. Oh well, I knew where my dad lived, which was in the community next to his work. At about 8 o'clock in the evening, I took a taxi there with my mom. It was an old community, with a history of at least 30 years. Looking from a distance, the windows were still the same wooden frames as before, and they were dilapidated. My mother took one look and frowned. Does he live in a place like this? Well, this is too broken. My dad probably wanted to save money. My mother said nothing more. She didn't want to go upstairs, so she sat in a milk tea shop at the entrance of the community and asked me to deliver it. In fact, I have never been to my father's residence. I called him and asked him to come down, but I didn't expect that he was still working overtime at work. When my father heard that my mother and I were coming, he put down what he was doing and hurried back. I pointed to the milk tea shop. My mother is inside. Dad stood at the door and didn't move. I was anxious. Dad, what do you mean you don't want to go in? Will you find someone new in less than a year? What are you talking about? Dad glared at me. I was afraid that your mother didn't want to see me. She doesn't see you, and you don't see her either. Are you going to stay like this for the rest of your life? I finally managed to lure my mother here, but the opportunity was fleeting. If you don't go in, the next time you want to see me may not be when. Dad was still hesitating, so I dragged him in forcefully. Mom, my dad is here. Mom looked up and was stunned for a moment, her eye circles slowly turning a little red. I haven't seen him for more than half a year, and my father is obviously looking more haggard. His hair was messy and it looked like it hadn't been trimmed for a long time. He was wearing a set of wrinkled work clothes. The originally elegant senior engineer had now become a decadent man. Dad rubbed his hands and said coyly, "Old Shuang, are you okay?" "Good. Me, I'm okay, too." My father and mother looked at each other without saying a word. I watched from the side and could only worry. After a while, my mother said she was going back. I had no choice but to secretly leave my mother's ID card and accompany her home. Since this meeting, my mother has often been alone at home in a daze. Twice, I was absent-minded and burned the dishes. I knew that she was still thinking about her father, so I whispered a few words in her ear from time to time. Dad is so pitiful. He has no food to eat at night, so he only eats steamed buns and fermented bean curd. In order to make more money, my father slept for 3 or 4 hours every night. After a long time, his body couldn't bear it. It was getting cold, and my father was still wearing the down jacket he bought a few years ago. The down inside was translucent and he was shivering from the cold. One windy and snowy night, I dragged my dad home. "Mom, the heating in the house my dad rented is broken and the ground is frozen. There is nowhere to go tonight, so let him stay here for one night." My mother didn't speak for a long time. Dad stood at the door and said uneasily, "I'll go to the hotel and spend the night. There is room at home." "Why would you go to a hotel?" I begged. "Mom, just let Dad stay for one night. Still, no more trouble." My father turned around to leave with a disappointed look on his face, and then my mother said calmly, "There is room in the study, so you can make do with it for one night. Ran, go get the quilt from the cabinet." "Okay." I happily pulled my dad, who was standing stupidly at the door and couldn't believe his ears, into the study. I found a quilt and pillow from the closet and put them casually in the study. I shouted loudly, "Mom, I just got a call. I have an impromptu meeting at school and I won't be back tonight." Then he winked at Dad. "Why live in the study room? Seize the opportunity and go back to the master bedroom." After saying that, I immediately ran away. 3 days later, when I came home again, my father was cooking in the kitchen wearing an apron. "Yo, are you back at work?" I smiled. "Go and wash your hands quickly." Dad's face is full of joy. "I'll try my dad's craftsmanship later." I asked curiously, "Did you get off work so early today?" "I have been very busy recently. Every time I see him, he is either working overtime or on a business trip. In the future, I will try my best to work less overtime and not travel on business." Dad added water to the pot and stewed it while clearing the cutting board. "I lived alone some time ago, and I realized how hard your mother has been working these years. Cleaning the house, doing laundry, cooking, and paying monthly gas and electricity bills are really a lot to do. Think about your mother again." She has to take care of her children and study, which is much harder than mine. I used to have hot meals when I walked in and matching clothes when I went out. It was your mother who took care of me. After. I will also share more housework and spend more time with your mother. I teased him. Dad, you have a good intention. But if you don't work overtime to make money, who will repay the loan for the new house in the future? What loan? My mother happened to come over and asked in confusion. Mom, don't you know? Dad bought a house in your name and will take you to see it one day. My mother was full of surprise. What is this child talking nonsense about? Dad smiled innocently. What Ran said is true. The housing certificate has been issued. He went into the study, and after a while he came out with a red book and handed it to my mother like a treasure. My mother opened it and looked at it carefully, and water slowly appeared in her eyes. For the past 6 months, you have been working overtime a lot. Are you exhausted, wife? I'm not tired, as long as you are happy. Dad was busy showing his loyalty. Humph, you two are working together to deceive me. My mother wiped the corners of her eyes and stared at me, but there was an irrepressible smile on her lips. Apart from this, what else did you do behind my back? What an injustice. I looked innocent, and besides turning off the heating valve in the house my dad rented, I really didn't do anything. Dad and Mom finally reconciled and the whole family was happy. I don't know where I heard the news, and my uncle and cousin came to my house again. Xiangzi, now that you have reconciled with your siblings, we are a family again. Look, Xiaowei needs 200,000 yuan in gift money for his wedding. Can you help me? My father glanced at my mother, and my mother immediately said, don't look at me. This is your Chen family's business. Ran and I are outsiders. How can you and Ran be outsiders? You are the closest people to me. Dad smiled at Mom and then said to his uncle, brother, it was my fault back then. I shouldn't have cheated during the lottery and selfishly wanted to change my destiny. For more than 20 years, I have been carrying the shackles because of this matter, and I have tried my best to give back. To be honest, I have been very tired these years. While I repay you and my family, I have let down my little family, Shuaying and Ran. During the time of divorce, I had thought it through. Even if he is sentenced, he should be released one day after serving his sentence. Brother, I have tried my best. From now on, I will put Dad's alimony into a card every month. As for other people and things, I don't care about them anymore. After talking for a long time, you just don't want to take Xiaowei's gift money. The uncle was furious. If you don't give it to your nephew, who do you want to leave your money to? Shuaying is my wife. Ran is my daughter. Everything I have belongs to them. Second uncle, are you out of your mind? My cousin was furious. I am the only male in our family. Only I can continue the family lineage of the old Chen family. You want to leave money to these outsiders. They are the most important people to me. Dad said frankly that I have reached the age where I know my destiny. Every day from now on, I just want to be with them and take good care of them. I don't care. You are the son of the old Chen family, and your money can only be spent by our Chen family. My cousin was furious. Let me tell you, if you don't give me the gift money today and delay my wedding, you won't be able to live well. I stared at him. What do you want? If you are heartless, don't blame us for being unjust. If you don't give me the money, I will destroy your house. My cousin raised the vase on the coffee table high and looked at my dad fiercely. I want to ask you for the last time, will you give me the money? Dad protected my mother behind him. Xiaowei, you can smash it. But I also tell you clearly that as long as you dare to take action and hurt my wife and daughter, I will call the police immediately. Over the years, my father has always been gentle and elegant, rarely getting into arguments with others. But now, he was like an old hen guarding her young, nervous and alert, ready to join the fight at any time. When the uncle looked at his father, he didn't look like he was joking. Xiangzi, why should I call the police if my family is arguing? As he spoke, he pulled his cousin away. My cousin was scratching his head and refused to leave. The uncle scolded. Little bastard, what are you making a fuss about? If you are arrested by the police station for this matter and have a criminal record, you will not be able to find a target. My uncle and cousin left, and I gave a thumbs up. Dad, man. Dad smiled and put his arm around Mom's shoulders. Your mother used to protect me from wind and rain. Now, it's my turn. After New Year's Day, the Spring Festival is coming soon. On the New Year's Day, when I came back from outside, my father was hanging lanterns and posting the God of Wealth. Dad, why did you think of doing these this year, at this time in previous years? Because I was going back to my hometown to celebrate the new year. I only put up a symbolic Spring Festival couplet and never arranged these festive things at home. Dad smiled and said, I won't go back to my hometown this year. Our family of 3 will celebrate the new year at home. Wow, that's great. I ran into the house excitedly, and my mother was putting window grills on the glass. The whole house looked beaming with joy. Mom, Dad has changed a lot now. I sighed with emotion and asked in a low voice, have you completely forgiven him now? My mother put down what she was doing, thought about it seriously, and then nodded. Although there were twists and turns in the process, it was worth it to completely resolve your father's heartache after this incident. I pouted. It's a pity that that small house cost more than 1 million yuan. You and Dad worked so hard to save it. My mother smiled in relief. I feel bad too. But what happened back then? Your dad made mistakes first, and these are the prices he paid for his mistakes. Hearing what my mother said made me feel relieved. At this time, my father called me outside. Girl, come here and help me. I went over to take a look and saw that my father had prepared pen, ink, paper and inkstone. It turned out that he wanted to write a Spring Festival couplet by himself. I asked with a smile, Dad, this year is of great significance. What are you going to write about? Dad thought for a moment and then made a stroke of his pen. First couplet, firecrackers ring out the old year. Second line, peach charms bring the new year to thousands of households. Hangpi, bid farewell to the old and welcome the new.